What's up, everybody? Hello and good evening. Normally we started out a little bit different, but we have a little bit of recap to do. We're about 50% of the way through the book, maybe 52 or 53. Who's counting? How you guys doing? Welcome and good evening. I'm JAG Pro 11. We've been reading a wonderful story called Chasing the Sun, written by Ryan J Boog. Now, I woke up with a little bit of a throat thing going on. We'll see. And, it is what it is. It's no big deal. Let me also check out. While I'm talking here, I just wanted to kind of set the premise, do a little recap, and get us up to speed, especially for some of you guys who are just catching up. Maybe you've been around for a while. There we go. A little bit of that going on with a little bit of that. Okay, and a little bit of that. All right. Cool. I threw up a green screen for the shows we're doing on Wednesdays and Thursday nights. Nothing's changed here on Story Sanctuary. Like I said, we're reading Chasing the Sun by Ryan J Boog, read by yours truly, Jag Pro 11. So, William Boog, Ryan's great-great-grandfather, was a bastard child who was raised in the tenement of South Dublin through some extraordinary perseverance and circumstances, most known as a shoemaker, or should I say a bootmaker, in Ireland. He ended up marrying, making a family, losing some children, unfortunately, and eventually making his way to the United States, where he landed in Boston, only to suffer more terrible hardships, including the losses of many more children. After suffering through this rough season in Boston, he hears about Minnesota and heads there with whatever is left of his family and what's in his pockets. He gets settled in and things are looking on the up. When he gets the diagnosis he fears the most. His wife doesn't have long to live, unfortunately. So we're going to jump into this, and we're going to continue on with what has been an epic story so far, beginning with chapter 22. I'm Jag, I was going to say Jag Pro 11, and then it jumped into James as well. I am James A Greig. It is June 14th, 2026, and we are reading Chasing the Sun, written by Ryan J Boog. Starting with chapter 22. Where it sets. The doctor had gone. The house was quiet. William sat on the porch steps. Mary came out and sat beside him. The same geometry as every critical conversation in their marriage. Side by side, facing forward, absorbing the impossible. William's hands hung between his knees. He listened to the doctor. He had heard every word, but the words had not settled into him yet. There are other doctors, he said. We'll send to St. Paul, so we'll send to Chicago if we have to. Mary took his hand. William. He stopped. She had used his name quite quiet and final. I've given this body everything it has to give, she said. 10 babies, an ocean, 3 cities. I knew before he told me. The pain was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. No. His voice broke. The first crack. Yes. No, Mary. I didn't bring you all this way. I didn't drag you across the ocean, through Boston, and onto a train, and out to this godforsaken prairie so that... He stopped himself. He bit down until the corner where his jaw meets his skull bulged, and a vein across his temple swelled. His face turned a color that was somehow pink, yet devoid of any color. His eyes were wet. Mary watched him. She had watched him fight his entire life. She reached up and put her hand on his face, the same gesture from the night Rose was born. Her voice broke, but it did not falter. "You didn't drag me anywhere, William Boog." Her voice was the kindest sound in the house, the kindest in William's life. "I came because I wanted to. Because wherever you looked, I wanted to see what you were seeing. And I've seen it. All of it. Dublin, and the boat, and Boston, and this place. This good place, with the sky that doesn't end." She paused. She was gathering herself for the hardest part. "You said once you were going to follow the sun until you found where it set. Well, I found it first, love. And it's all right. It's a good place to rest." "No." William's voice was barely a whisper now. "I can't go on without you." William broke, quietly, completely. He put his head against her shoulder and she held him. Mary. His Mary. The woman who had said yes on Michael's Lane and never once asked him to slow down. They sat on the steps until the light was gone. The following week, Mary declined. William watched it happen and could do nothing to stop it. He stood in the hallway one night after she had fallen asleep and pressed his fist against the wall, hard enough to feel the plaster resist. He had built this house. He had framed these walls with his own hands, and none of it, not the house, not the business, not the money, not the name he had hammered into this city, none of it could buy her one more week. The thought of the God that Mary prayed to every night, the God he had tolerated, attended church for, stood beside her in the pew and mouthed the words to the hymns he did not feel. That God deserved nothing but contempt. The slow, deliberate contempt of a man who has been keeping counts. 6 children in the ground. A wife dying in a house he had built with his own hands. And somewhere in the architecture of heaven, a presence that had watched all of it, permitted every bit. His fist pressed harder. His breathing was fast, shallow. He wanted to hit something that could hit back. He wanted an enemy he could see. He exhaled, let his hand drop. William went into the kitchen and poured water, drank it, and set the glass down. He would not pray. No way that he would not give the satisfaction. William would do what he had always done. He would show up and be present when she opened her eyes in the morning, and he would be there when she closed them at night. This was his version of prayer. Presence. Even in her decline, Mary was still Mary. A Sunday, the family at church, Mary in the pew, singing a hymn. Her voice was the thin but present. William stood beside her, holding the hymnal open for both of them, his arm brushing hers. This extraordinary act, standing next to his wife in a church, became something holy. She looked at him and smiled. Thin, but it reached her eyes. He held the book a little higher so she would not have to lift her own arm. She did not believe a word of the hymn. He sang it anyway, low, for her. Mary in the kitchen, reaching for a pot on a high shelf. She could not reach it. She looked for something to stand on. Mary Margaret said, "I'll get that for ye, Ma," and gently took it down for her. Mary let her. The concession cost her something, but Mary Margaret stood there holding the pot, proud of being needed, and Mary let go. Mary walking in the garden, slower now. She stepped to rest against the fence. Rose, 9 years old, brought her a flower. Mary took it, smelled it, tucked it behind Rose's ear. She had so little left. and she was spending all of it here. She reorganized the kitchen drawers one afternoon. Nobody had asked her to. The drawers were already organized. But she pulled each one out and laid the contents on the table and sorted them again. The knives in one section, the spoons in another, the wooden ladles that William had carved from scrap oak during their first winter on Evergreen. She held each item. She placed it back. This was not housekeeping. It was an inventory of every meal she had ever set in front of the people she loved. She folded the tablecloth and smoothed it flat with both palms. She ran her fingers along the hem where Mary Margaret had mended a tear years ago. She had watched those small hands sew the repair in the candlelight on a Boston evening. The tablecloth had traveled from Prince Street to Ramsey to Evergreen to Dayton. It held food for every version of the Boog family. It was stained in places that no amount of washing could reach. She folded it, put it back on the table. William came through the kitchen and found her standing at the window with her hands on the sill. The same posture she had held the day they moved into the Evergreen house. The day she leaned into the light and said it felt magical. She was leaning into the light again, but her weight was different now. She held the sill because the sill held her. He stood in the doorway. She did not turn around. She knew he was there. She always knew when he was standing behind her. 30 years of marriage had given her the particular sense the air in a room changed when William Boog entered it. "The garden needs weeding," she said. "I'll see to it so." "The basil is too close to the fence. It needs more sun." "I will tell her." She turned from the window. Her face was thin. The bones showed through, but her eyes held the same quality that they held on Stephen Street when she was 15 and wringing sheets with more force than necessary. Strength that was not about muscle. Strength that came from a place no illness could reach. "I feel at peace, William. I feel joy when I stand at this window. It is something that I cannot describe. My chest used to feel tight. I was tense, but not anymore. I have never felt peace like this." A tear ran down her cheek. "Come close, Astor. The hardships are behind me now, and my heart is light. I pray the same peace and happiness comes to you." Letitia had come from the sisters the day before, arriving at the house with a small bag and a calmness that belonged to someone older than 20. Mary talked with her daughters about it. They spoke about God and of where she was going. Rose looked up to Letitia, and Letitia led a prayer over Mary and the Boog family. Rose followed with one of her own. Mary welled up with tears, but these were tears of pride and joy. Her hands, the same hands that had wrung sheets in Dublin, that had scrubbed floors on Aston's Quay, that had pressed cool cloths to the foreheads of dying children. They were thin now. The veins stood out. They intertwined her fingers and folded them on her lap. Uh-oh. 1 second, guys. Okay. William came home from the work one evening. He paused in the doorway. Mary was asleep in the chair. Her belly was larger. The room was dim. She looked peaceful, and he was terrified by how peaceful she looked. Because peace and death can wear the same expression. The candle in the bedroom was lit and was pooling wax. Mary lay in her bed. Her belly was distended with fluid, but the rest of her was thin, consumed. The children had been in and out all day. Letitia sat in a chair beside the bed. Rose stayed on a blanket in the corner. William sat on the edge of the bed, holding Mary's hand. He had been here before, beside the beds of dying children, but this was different. This was the woman who had made every version of his life livable. The constant, the one who had said yes on Stephen Street. "William," her voice was faint. "I'm here." "The children." "I'll take care of them. Everyone." William could not reply. There was a small pause. "Don't stop chasing whatever it is you are, William. Don't you dare stop. It's not in you to stop, and it'll kill you if you try." He held her hand tighter, rubbing his thumb along her hand. The ghost of a smile crossed her face. "And for God's sake, hire someone to do your laundry. You're hopeless with the wash." A small, broken smile from William, the last smile Mary would make him make. She opened her eyes and looked at him. She looked at the window. The Minnesota sky was dark now, but she was not seeing the dark. She was seeing every sunset from Dublin to here, every sky that had shared. She saw the horizon he had pointed at and said there. She saw it all at once, a lifetime of light compressed into a final moment. "I see it, love," she whispered. "And I hope to see you there, too." Her eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. Her hand relaxed in his. William sat beside her in the dark. The candle sputtered. The room was silent. Letitia performed the sign of the cross and prayed silently. Rose and Mary Margaret slept. Outside, the prairie wind pushed through the grass. Somewhere far away, a coyote called. The stars were bright and infinite. On November 11th, 1887, Mary was gone. This was a better funeral, not the desperate, windswept affairs of Boston. The St. Paul Irish community arrived. Neighbors, business associates, members of the parish slowly walked in. These services were in the St. Paul Cathedral. William stood rigid in a dark coat. His children surrounded him. The priest spoke, but William was not there. After the services, the closest people to the Boogs showed up at the Calvary Cemetery. William's body was at the graveside, but the rest of him was somewhere else. Dublin, Boston, the gangway of City of Paris. The porch steps where she told him. The wash house on Stephen Street where she held his gaze for the first time. The window in the kitchen. He was everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. The dirt fell in the coffin. William watched each shovelful. When it was over, the mourners filed away. Mary Margaret and Letitia led the children home. William stayed. He stood at the grave alone. He took the paper from his breast pocket, unfolded it along the crease. The left half, Mary, at the top. Her name, the first thing he had ever written on this paper. The night George was born in Dublin. Below her, the column of their children. The column of names was also a list of experiences and emotions. Experiences and emotions that he had been wrestling with for decades. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost. He read them all, slowly. Then his eyes returned to the top, to her name, Mary. The name that had anchored this paper since the beginning. The name without an X. He stood at her grave and he knew what he had to do. He had done it for children 6 times. 6 small crosses, and each one had nearly killed him. But this was different. This was the name at the top. This was the heading. This was the woman who had made every other name on this paper possible. He did not have a pen. He folded the paper and returned it to his chest. Put his hat on. With a knot as large as Minnesota in his stomach, he walked away. That night, William sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. The children were asleep. Mary's chair was empty. Her apron hung on the hook by the stove. Her reading glasses rested on the windowsill where she had left them. William stared at these objects. He did not touch them. They were evidence, proof that she had been here, that she had been real. The paper was unfolded on the table. A pen lay beside it. He had been sitting here for a long time, looking at her name at the top of the left column. He picked up the pen. His hand was steady. His hand had done this so many times. It had learned to betray nothing even when the rest of him was in ruins. He wrote the X after Mary. Mary, X. The first name, the last X he ever wanted to write. Below her, the column of names, and now the name at the top carried the same mark as the children it sheltered. He set the pen down. He did not fold the paper, he just looked at it. The single piece of paper that had traveled from Dublin to Boston to St. Paul, folded and unfolded 100 times, carrying everything he loved, everything he had lost, and now the anchor of it all had an X after it. He poured himself a whiskey, drank it, poured another, and another. He reached his limit and set the glass down without drinking. In an alcohol-induced state, memoirs flooded. He began to sing, off-key, softly to the empty chair. Mary, you have a space in my heart, oh Mary. The charade could not continue any longer. No more words can come out. His head dropped into the crook of his forearm. No intelligible words proceeded. Just sobs, a puddle of tears, whiskey and drool forms under the mess that is William Boog. He had no choice but to stay there. The glass sat where he left it. The paper lay open on the table. William stared down at the row of ink crosses, and the truth settled cold in his stomach. The sickness hadn't followed them across the water. He had carried it with him. The kitchen held the sound of his breathing, and nothing else. Excerpt: Certificate of Death, St. Paul, Minnesota. Mary Ann Boog. Female, age 43. Born, Ireland. Date of death, 12th month, 11th year, 1887. Cause of death, ascites. Mary Boog died 1887. Chapter 23, God's Walls. William did what William did. He worked. The winter after Mary died, his crew finished a day's work at a job on Wabasha Street. A church interior, vaulted ceilings, long walls, plaster that had been waiting years for a paper coat. One second, you guys. Let me fix something here. I may not have refreshed. I'm getting told. Yeah, shoot. Should be on chapter 23 here, you guys. See if we can fix this minor difficulty. Sorry if I just sent out a bunch of info that shouldn't be out there. I don't know why Twitch is grabbing that when it shouldn't be. We'll edit it out in post. Little behind the curtain here, you guys. Ryan is texting me. Could have jumped in the chat. I wouldn't have minded. I could have said in the chat. Keep it all on the up and up here. Ryan has been doing a fantastic job behind the scenes, you guys, helping out with the slideshow, making sure that the pictures align with the reading as we're clicking through the reading. A little bit of fun with some HTML magic, I'm sure. And it should align with chapter 23 right now. But loaded the links. It is what it is, you guys. I don't know, I might not have pictures. We could do it the old-fashioned way. I think I got some chapter 23. Let me pull up the slides real quick and see. Nevertheless, our IT guy, never fear, will be here. Hey, chapter 24. All right. And scaling back. We're going to hit refresh one more time, see if we jump back in. All right. It did jump for a second, which means he's working on the back end there, you guys. There it is, chapter 23. Wonderful. Thank you, Ryan Boog, author of this wonderful book, creator of all wonderful things you're seeing as far as the text and the visuals go. The picture of his great-great-grandfather. And this fantastic music that he worked out too. And Ryan is saying, we're good to go. Let's continue on. I agree. We'll start from the top. I can always edit this out if I need to. Good chance I probably won't. Okay. And I mean, we're in the golden hour. The sickness hasn't quite fully kicked in. The throat is still projecting noise. And we're doing good. We got a nice dulcet tone to get on with chapter 23. God's Walls. All right. Chapter 23. God's Walls. William did what William did. He worked. The winter after Mary died, his crew finished a day's work at a job on Wabasha Street. A church interior, vaulted ceilings, long walls, plaster that had been waiting for years for a proper coat. His men packed their brushes at dusk and filed out into the cold. William told them he would lock up. He did not lock up. He lit 2 lanterns and hung them from the scaffold rails. The wicks caught and steadied and threw a warm, uneven light across the nave. He climbed back up on the loaded brush. With a loaded brush, the scaffold planks bowed under his weight. He could feel the grain of the wood through his boot soles, worn smooth by his crew's feet over the past week. The church was empty. The pews sat in rows below him, dark and ordered. The altar at the far end was draped in white linen that had gone gray in the lantern light. He could smell the place. Cold stone and old candle wax. The faint sweetness of incense that lived in the walls no matter how many times they were scrubbed. Linseed oil from his own cans cut through all of it, sharp and clean. The one smell in the room that belonged to him. He dipped the brush. The paint was the good formula. His formula. Pure white lead and boiled oil mixed to the consistency he wanted, heavy enough to cover in one pass, thin enough to lay flat without ridging. He drew the brush along the wall in a long stroke. The wet paint caught the lantern flame and turned amber. The wall behind it was still the dull, chalky gray of bare plaster. The line between the two was clean and sharp, done and undone. He worked his way across the section, overlapping each stroke by a finger's width. His shadow moved on the opposite wall, enormous, wavering, a dark shape with a brush arm that stretched from floor to ceiling, painting alongside him. He stopped once and looked at it. The shadow stopped too. He turned back to the wall. The silence was consuming. No street noise reached through the stone. No wind. The only sound was the brush loading, the wet drag of the stroke, the tap of bristles against the can rim when he wiped the excess. Load, stroke, wipe. The rhythm had not changed since Prince Street, since the brownstones of Boston, since his first day with Doyle in Dublin, when the old man put leather in his hand and said nothing and watched him figure it out. The rhythm was the one thing in his life that had never betrayed him. He worked through 2 sections and started a third. The lantern on the left rail guttered in a draft from somewhere he could not see, and the shadows on the wall jumped and resettled. He set the brush across the can. He stood on the scaffold, 20 feet above the pews. His chest was moving, but his body was not. He could see the altar below, the white linen, the brass candlesticks, the crucifix on the black back wall with its wooden cross, Christ hanging in the same position he had hung in for 100 years, head down, arms wide, suffering on permanent display. Mary had believed in this, believed with a deep down faith. She prayed every night on her knees on whatever floor they lived on, tenement or rented room, or the house he built her. She dragged him to Mass every Sunday and went home because she asked and because he loved her more than resented the asking. The hymns she sang and meant, the children she taught to say grace. She told Rose that God watched over them even when it did not feel like it. And Rose believed her because Mary believed herself. And God had watched 6 of her children die and then killed her too. A sound came out of William, low, guttural. It started below the ribs behind the sternum. His jaw clenched until his back teeth ached. He looked at the crucifix, and the contempt that moved through him was not hot. It was cold, slow, and specific. The contempt of a man who was kept a careful count. He was painting God's house. He was standing on a scaffold in the dark, alone applying this best formula to walls that would hold hymns and prayers and breath of people who believed in the thing that had ruined him. And he was doing a perfect job, because that was what he did. The work was the work. He would not punish the wall for what the God behind it had done. He picked up the brush and loaded it. He drew it across the plaster. His hand remembered Mary's hand. Specifically, the weight of it in his, lighter than it should have been at that end. He remembered the weight in his palm, and his arm kept moving. The stroke did not waver. He went on to the next section. He came home past midnight. The children were asleep. The kitchen was dark. He sat at the table and did not eat and did not drink. Mary's chair was across from him. Her apron hung on the hook by the stove. The cotton faded to the color that was once blue. He had not let anyone move it. Letitia, who had stayed on after the funeral, tried gently to fold it away. He told her to leave it. The next morning, he was up before dawn, on the scaffold before his crew arrived. He laid primer with the focused silence of a man who understood that if he stopped moving, he would have to sit in that kitchen again with that chair and apron. His men thought he was driven. He was not driven. He was running. In October of 1889, Bryant met him at the corner of Dayton and Western. William climbed down from his carriage and stood in the lots. They were larger than the evergreen parcels, 2 long rectangles that faced south with mature elms along the boulevard. The leaves had turned gold and copper and dried blood red that only Minnesota produced, colors so saturated it looked artificial. The ground under his feet was soft from recent rain, black topsoil, not the sandy fill you get closer to the river. He could smell the wet earth, and beneath it, the faint rot of fallen leaves already breaking down. Brian unrolled the plat map on the hood of his buggy and weighted the corners with stones. $1,100 for both. Same terms as Evergreen. William walked the property line. He paced it north to south, counting steps. He looked south toward the river bluffs, then turned and looked north toward the avenue. A woman passed on the sidewalk pushing a pram. A boy rode past on a bicycle. The elms threw the long shadows across the grass. I'll take them. Bryant rolled the map. You're collecting dirt faster than most men collect debts, Mr. Boog. William did not explain himself. He did not need another lot. He needed to keep moving. He needed to pour money into dirt because dirt did not die. It did not leave. It did not swell with fluid and thin to nothing in a bed he had built. The boy from the tenements who had grown up owing nothing was filling his name with deeds. He could not stop, and he did not intend to. He tried to stay busy to avoid dealing with his past. He ran the shooting gallery at St. Luke's Fair that autumn. The man who had chased geese out of gardens as a boy in Dublin, killed one with a plank in Boston, who hunted birds in the Minnesota brush with a 12-gauge, now stood behind a booth at a church fair calling out scores and loading rifles for parishioners. Steady hand, sharp eye, the children ran between the booths, and he watched them and kept working. At a ceremony that same month, William stood on a small stage, presented a bell to the Archbishop John Ireland. The city chose William to present it, as he would not have chose this himself. In an awkward exchange, he held the bell with both hands and said a few plain words. The Archbishop received it. The crowd applauded. William stepped back. He looked out at the faces. His eyes moved across the crowd and stopped, briefly, on nothing, then moved on. He stepped off the stage. He went home and looked at his children. Mary Margaret was grown now, and her mother's sharp face and direct way of standing in a room. Letitia was a young woman now, behind convent walls, quieter than ever, with a stillness that made people trust her. Rose was still small. They needed him. So did his business and the local St. Paul community. He could not come apart. Late at night, after the children were in bed, William sat at the kitchen table with his account books. He was still good at this. The numbers, the bids, the cost, the margins. His mind worked in even when the rest of him had gone hollow. He finished the books and closed them. The kitchen was quiet. Mary's chair was still empty. Her apron still hung on the hook by the stove. He sat there. He did not get up. He did not pour whiskey or sing or weep. He just sat in the chair across from the empty one, in the kitchen of a house he had built, in a city that knew his name, with a little money in the bank and 3 living children asleep down the hall. All of it. All of it. And this was still the shape of his evenings. The apron hung on its hook. He looked at it until the lamp burned low. Interlude, Grants Pass, Oregon, 1925. Hollis sets his pen down. He does not pick it up again. The clock on the wall reads 2:30. They've been at this for over an hour. William is looking at the window. His hands are flat on the arms of the chair. He has just finished talking about the apron, the hook by the stove. He has not spoken for nearly a minute, and Hollis has not pushed him. Hollis turns back 3 pages in his notes, reads something, reads it again. Mr. Boog? Hollis. You brought Mary across the Atlantic. She was a girl from a wash house. She had never left Dublin. She had not. You moved her into a tenement on Prince Street where the water was poisoned. 4 of the children she bore died in the place of because of it. You moved her again to St. Paul. She carried 10 pregnancies in 20 years. She was in her 40s when the fluid took her. William's jaw tightens. William does not blink. You said you followed the sun. Dublin to Boston to St. Paul. Always west. Always the next place. And Mary went with you every time. She chose to come. She chose to come because you asked. And you asked because you needed to go. Every time you felt the ground getting soft under your feet, you moved. New shop, new city, new lot to buy. You said so yourself. The dirt doesn't die. The dirt doesn't leave. William has gone still. His breathing has changed. Hollis can see the old man's pulse in his neck, visible above the collar, faster than it was a minute ago. What are you asking me, Hollis? Hollis folds his hands on his desk. He has the decency not to look away. Was the life you were building the thing that wore her out? The skin around William's eyes tighten. His face stiffens. He grips the arm of the chair and his knuckles go white. He does not leave. He sits there, gripping the chair, and the silence stretches until the clock's ticking is the loudest thing in the room. Every day, William says. His voice is hoarse, scraped raw. Every day since November of 1887, I have asked myself that question. But you have the sums wrong, Hollis. It wasn't the life or the work that wore her out. It was me. He stops, breathes. His grip on the chair has not loosened. I built a fortress of deeds. Paint, brick, just to prove to a father and mother who discarded me that the name Boog was worth something. I thought if I built the wall high enough, nothing could reach us. But a wall doesn't protect a house when the poison is already locked inside the gates. I know what I did, Hollis. I know the cost. I have been paying it for 38 years. I am cursed. The shadow from the window frame has moved in an inch across the desk since they started this part of the conversation. She told me not to stop, William says. His voice is quieter now. On the porch. She told me not to stop chasing whatever I was chasing. She said it would kill me if I tried. He pauses. That was her giving me permission to keep going. It was also her telling me she knew what it had cost her. She knew, Hollis. She was not a fool. She was the furthest thing from a fool. He releases the chair, looks down at his hands, opens and closes them once. I loved her more than I have ever loved anything on this earth. I used her up. Those two things are both true. You can write that down or leave it out. I don't much care which, but everything I love that's near ends up dying. Chasing the sun had cost me a wife and many kids. I knew right then, by being near to what I want to thrive, my curse would just hunt that down too. Hollis picks up his pen. He does not write. The curse, Hollis says quietly, the word feeling heavy in the quiet room. I deal in titles and deeds, Mr. Boog. I trained to tell you that the world is just, well, that disease don't care about a family name, it's just life. But looking at this column of losses, I guess I don't know what to say to that. He looks down at the empty lines remaining on the official will. There are spaces meant for decades that follow 1887. Most men would have closed the ledger right there. Hollis says, looking up. How does a man who believes he ruins what is near to him find a reason to lace his boots up the next morning? I may be a curse, but damn it, the Boog name will live on, purely out of spite of my detractors. Hollis stares at him, the pen resting silent between his fingertips. I'm sorry I asked. Don't be. It's an honest question. You're the first person who ever asked it out loud, he exhales. Adjusts his collar. Most people hear the story and they think I'm a hero. The immigrants who made it. The man who kept going. Mary knew better. Mary always knew better. He's quiet for a moment. Then he straightens in the chair. There's more to tell. Are you ready? Hollis nods. He turns to a fresh page. Well, after Mary died, I did what I always did. I worked. I bought land and kept the family fed. The children grew up around me, and I tried not to ruin them the way I ruined her. He stops. 3 years I went on like that. Then some woman at a church social decided I looked pitiful enough to need help. The corner of his mouth moves. Not quite a smile. The ghost of a one. She was wrong about that. But I didn't argue with who she introduced me to. Part 4, The Other Half, 1889 to 1900. Chapter 24, A Kansas Twister. 3 years passed. The grief did not leave. It changed shape, settled deeper, became part of the way he held his shoulders and the way he did not laugh. In the spring of 1890, a parish social, conversation, lemonade, children running across the lawn, women in Sunday dresses moving in clusters. The Irish community did what it always did. They gathered, gossiped, and sized each other up. William was here because his children had insisted. He stood at the edge of the crowd with a glass of lemonade. He was not drinking, watching the proceedings, waiting for an acceptable moment to leave. A neighbor woman approached him. She was in her 50s, broad and purposeful.
William Boog, there's someone you should meet. She's a widow. Recently moved to this side of town. Lovely woman. Charlotte Travers is her name, but everyone calls her Lottie.
I'm not looking to...
Lottie, come here at once. This is Mr. Boog, the painter.
She came over. Charlotte Travers. She was 31 years old. She walked with a momentary, almost imperceptible pause between steps. Her hands clasped in front of her as if she was not entirely sure this was social. Had been a good idea. She was not Irish, not from the tenements, and not from any world William recognized. Her dress was clean and pressed, but not new, and it hung on her loosely at the shoulders. The hem had been let down recently. The crease of the old hemline was still visible, a faint ridge circling the fabric where the original hem had been. She wore no jewelry except a thin band on the third finger of her right hand, moved there from the left, a widow's habit. She turned it absently with fingers on her other hand, and she was thinking. She was pretty, not Mary's kind of pretty, which had been fierce and weathered. Lottie's face was softer, open. Her hair was cool color of the copper, pinned up in a way that was already coming loose on one side. Her collarbone stood sharp above the neckline of the dress.
She had lost weight she could not afford to lose, and her body showed it in places she could not hide. She had the look of a woman running a household on nerve and tea and not enough sleep. And the social was costing her efforts she did not have to spare. She extended her hand. William shook it briefly. "The painter?" Lottie said. "I've seen your advertisements in the Globe." She said it quickly, as though offering proof she had a reason to be in this conversation. "Ye read the advertisements?" "I read everything. Force of habit." She paused, then turned her on her finger. "My father was a lawyer in Kansas. She said, if you stop reading, you stop thinking." Her voice trailed off. She had intended to say more, but the thought had gotten away from her. She looked down at her hands. William studied this woman. Her accent threw him. Soft Kansas vowels, flat on the A's, nothing like the voices he had spent his life surrounded by. "Your husband?" he asked. "Valentin Travers. He fought the Civil War. He was one of the 12 to survive and defend Fort Sumter. Artillery. Won a congressional medal." She had said this many times before, always with a shy bravado. Then her voice became smaller. "He passed away recently. I depended on him for a great deal." William felt it, the particular weight of the sentence that has an abyss underneath it. He recognized it because he carried the same one. He did not reach for it. He stepped sideways, the instinct of a man who was not ready to stand in that room with a stranger. "It sounds like you found a great man in Valentin," he exhaled. "I lost my wife a few years ago. She was Irish. We came here 15, 20 years ago. Travers is unusual for an American name. I've seen it in Ireland, though." "He was Irish, as it happens, and a bit older." She paused. The corner of her mouth turned as if she were about to say something else. She stopped herself. A flush crept across her cheek, her neck. She turned the ring again. The neighbor woman was hovering 6 feet away with a plate of biscuits, and they barely concealed satisfaction of a woman whose scheme was working. William saw her and the scheme at the same time. "You'll have to forgive me, Miss Daly," he said. "She's been trying to marry me off since the funeral." The flush deepened. Lottie's eyes went to the ground. She had not arranged this. She had walked into it, and now she was standing in the middle of someone else's plan with no way to step out of it gracefully. Her hand went to her collar, checking that she was still buttoned, still composed. She was not entirely any of those things. "I should let you get back to your afternoon," she said. Her voice had thinned. She was retreating and doing it badly. William could see the effort it cost her to hold a pleasant expression on her face, while her feet were already pointed toward the gate. "It was very nice to meet you, Mr. Boog." She turned and walked across the lawn. Her stride was quick and her shoulders were high and tight, held the way until she could get around a corner. She passed through the gate and was gone. William stood with his lemonade. He watched the gate for a moment after she had left. Then he set the glass on the nearest table and went to find his children. Photograph: young Lottie, St. Paul, Minnesota. Age and date unknown. William was finishing a house on St. Clair Avenue, not far from his own street, late afternoon. His last man had already left early. He worked alone, his leg strong from years of carrying cans up and down ladders. He finished his section, moved the ladder, and finished the next. The autumn sun dropped low. He climbed down for the last time, stepped back and looked at the house, blinked once, and admired it. The homeowner came out. "It's better than I imagined. I hope it lasts forever. How soon until you need to repaint?" "This formula will last your patience. The next time you speak with me, I hope it's to refer a friend to me." He was loading the carriage, his horse standing patient in the traces, when a voice carried across the street. "I see a streak on the north side." His head snapped up. The homeowner had gone inside. Lottie stood on the opposite sidewalk, hat in one hand,
the other shielding her eyes from the low sun. She was smiling, but there was a nervousness in her stance, her weight on her back foot, ready to retreat if the joke fell flat. Lottie, what are you doing here?
I walked to check to the clerk to discuss bonds insurance. Those tiresome affairs after a death in the family.
She gestured vaguely up the road.
I was on my way home.
What do you think? He pointed to the house behind him. Grand, ain't she? She looked at it, not politely, the way most people look at a painted house. She looked at it the way he did. Her eyes went to the south-facing wall first, where the weather would hit hardest. Then the trim around the windows. Then the porch rail. She walked a few steps to see the angle of the eaves.
It needed it. The wood was cracking without it. You can see where the old coat failed at the joints.
She pointed to the corner where the two boards met under the roofline.
Your coverage looks solid there. That's usually where the gaps show.
William stared at her. She's reading his work the way he read it. Protection. A coat of paint between the wood and everything that wanted to eat it. How does a woman from Kansas know how to read a house like that? Lottie's hands unclasped. She was on sure ground now. Here, looking at the work, she understood. She was not the woman from the social who could not finish a sentence.
My father believed the work itself mattered more than the money. At 10 years old, he had me on a farm, carrying things, feeding animals, milking cows.
She made a face.
It was disgusting.
William laughed, a real laugh, pulled out of him before he could stop it.
By 16, he had taught me how to paint. My brother James and I worked alongside some rough and smelly men who did the heavy work, while I handled the detail, trim, window frames, anything that requires a steady hand.
She held up her right hand, fingers spread. There was faded calluses on the inside of her index finger, the kind a brush handle leaves.
It's a tough business, tougher than people think. But when you finish the job and step back and look at it, you can see what you did. That's worth something.
William heard his own words coming out of a woman from Kansas, and he did not know what to do with it. You're full of surprises, he said. But I have to tell you, your timing is off, Miss Daly. Or no, Miss Daly.
I know my timing is off, Mr. Boog. I've been off my timing since Valentin died.
She said it without self-pity, a woman naming the thing that was wrong with her because she was tired of pretending nothing was.
This isn't the final coat after you cut in the corners and edges. We're just calcimiming now, a first step.
William shoved his hands in his pockets. A first step indeed. How far is your walk?
A mile up the road.
She looked at him. She did not ask. She held her hat against the wind and let the question sit between them. The October chill did the rest.
There's room behind me on the bench, if it's not comfortable.
He shoved paint cans aside and wiped the rag across the seat. She climbed up and they sat back to back, the bench barely wide enough for the both of them. He could feel the warmth of her through his coat. The smell of the paint cans mixed with something else, lavender soap or rose water. He could not tell which. He had not sat this close to a woman since Mary. The horse pulled them down St. Clair. They could not see each other's faces. He found it easier to talk this way. Miss Lottie, I'm an honest man. If you can't take that, you may as well find another old Irishman with a mustache. Her laugh came from behind him.
Go on.
Two things are true. I like you, and I love my kids. They are my everything. I protect them, provide for them. I gave them a name. I want them to have the kids of their own, and I want grandchildren. Their mother gave her life for them. She can't be replaced.
I don't want to replace their mother. I am a mother myself. I never told you this, but Valentin and I have 6 children.
The carriage rolled on. William was quiet for a full block. The horse hooves on packed dirt filled the silence. Are they all alive? The question hung. Lottie heard what was in it, a man who could not ask that question lightly, because the answer had broken him before.
All 6. My oldest, Mary, was born in 77. My youngest, Clementine, a few years ago.
Your oldest is named Mary? So is mine. Born in 68. His thumb traced his knee. I have 3 kids, living, 3 girls, 2 born in Ireland, 1 here in St. Paul. They talked for blocks after that. By the time the carriage stopped outside her house, the air between them had changed. I'd like to see you again, Lottie.
I'd like that very much. Good evening, William.
She stepped down and walked to her door without looking back. William watched her go. Then he clicked his tongue and the horse pulled forward, and he rode home through the early dark. The courtship was slow. Lottie had her routines. She rose early. She kept a small journal in which she recorded the date, the weather, and one observation. She had started it after Valentin died because the days blurred without a record. She wrote in pencil because pencil could be erased, and Lottie believed a person should be able to revise her own record. She read the newspaper front to back. Not just the advertisements that had led her to William's name, editorials, court reports, property transfers, shipping news, the agricultural column, because her Kansas girlhood had given her an understanding of soil and seasons that had never fully left. She managed 6 children alone, as her father had run his law office. She had lists and schedules. Lottie had the expectation that everything would be done correctly. She laughed easily. This was the thing about her that caught people off guard. A woman who kept ledgers and managed 6 children alone should have been severe. She was not. She laughed at her own mistakes, at the children's inventions, at the absurdity of a world that had given her a decorated war hero for a first husband and was now apparently offering her an Irish painter. The laughter came from a place of warmth, and William noticed that it never had cruelty in it, not once. They walked through a park one afternoon. He told her about Dublin, and she listened the way few people did. She did not ask how he survived. She asked what the Liffey looked like from his window. He brought her to his shop. She walked through the space, past the paint cans, the brushes, the invoices tacked to the walls. She opened a can, examined the consistency, ran a brush across a piece of scrap wood, and studied the coverage. She held the brush properly, fingers in the right positions, pressure even. William watched her test his paint with the care of a professional, and he stood there with his arms folded and his mouth slightly open, and no words available. The girls met Lottie. Mary Margaret was guarded. Her mother's daughter, Letitia, home from the sisters for the evening, was cautious but warm. Rose liked the new lady who brought sweets. One evening, Lottie stayed for dinner. She told a story about Kansas, about a twister she had seen as a girl, the sky turning green, her father loading them into the cellar. The sound of it, like a train passing directly over the house. She told it well, her hands moving, her voice dropping at the right moments. Even Mary Margaret leaned forward. William watched her face as she told the story. Her eyes widened when she described the color of the sky. At the end, she laughed, at herself, at the memory of being small and terrified. She looked at her and felt loosening in his chest. He had not expected and did not trust. They sat on the porch one night, the same porch where Mary had told him she was dying. He had not sat here since, and Lottie was beside him. They did not touch. The stars were out, broken here and there by a thin strip of cloud. You don't have to tell me about her, Lottie said, but I want you to know that you can, if you ever want to. William nodded. He would. Not tonight.
Pa, can I help you at work again?
Mary, do you want to work or just get free carriage rides?
In your crammed and stained wagon? I'll take both. You're gone a lot. I'd like to work with you.
They rode together toward the first job. Mary Margaret was quiet for the first few blocks. Then he turned on the bench.
Are you courting Miss Lottie?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Why not? She's pretty. She tells good stories. She brings sweets.
What about ye mother?
Mary Margaret went quiet. The carriage wheels turned. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. Pa, it's all right. I don't like seeing you fight through everything alone. If you let Lottie go, you might not find someone like her again.
William looked at his daughter. The girl was staring straight ahead at the road, her face making an expression that reminded William of himself at 12, standing in the rain outside Doyle's workshop. She had her own mother's courage. I'll bring her over for dinner again. The following week, Lottie came to Evergreen Avenue. The table was set unevenly. Something on the stove had been rescued at the last moment. Rose had picked wildflowers and put them in a jar with the sincerity of a child who believes flowers fix everything.
You went through a lot of trouble, Lottie said, looking around. The house is warm. It smells nice. Thanks, Miss Lottie. No need to call me Miss Lottie. You can call me Lottie or Charlotte. I only offer that to people I like.
She winked. The child caught it.
We heard you have children of your own. When do we get to meet them?
William cut in. Kids? I think Miss Lottie and I should talk about that first.
Pa, don't be such a stick in the mud.
Girls, you're itching for a clipping. He was grinning. Okay, I agree. I think we should all get together, but this house can't hold everyone. We'd have to plan the food. Lottie leaned forward.
Como Park, north of here, we can each get there by horse in under an hour. They have a lake and a picnic ground.
The table erupted, cheering, questions, tumbling each other.
Who are your kids? How many? What are their names?
6. Gasps. The Boog children looked at each other. And Mary Margaret, my oldest daughter is named Mary too. She paused.
Would you like to know their names?
The girls at the table leaned in.
Mary, Annette, William, Joseph, James, Clementine, 13, 11, 9, 7, 4, and 3.
The children spent the rest of the evening in the state of giddy impatience. William and Lottie sat across from each other at the table, and the conversation moved easily. At the house on Evergreen Avenue held a sound it had not held in 3 years. After Lottie left, William cleared the dishes. The children had gone to bed. He stood at the sink with his sleeves rolled and washed each plate and dried it and put it away. Mary's apron still hung on the hook beside the stove. He had never moved it. He reached past it for the dish towel. His sleeve brushed the fabric. He stopped and stood there, his hand on the towel and his arm against the apron. The house was silent around him. His chest pulled tight. He left the lamp burning. This has been the reading of Chasing the Sun, written by Ryan J Boog, narrated by James A Greig. Thank you, and have a good night.